You're listening to There Ought to Be a Law, the Center for Auto Safety podcast with Executive Director Michael Brooks, Chief Engineer Fred Perkins, and hosted by me, Anthony Cimino. For over 50 years, the Center for Auto Safety has worked to make cars safer. Yeah, welcome to the Center for Auto Safety podcast. We're going to talk about the nutritional benefits of tofu. Which is neither here nor there, but today is Wednesday, May 20th. And if you're eating tofu, just don't do it while driving the vehicle.
It makes a good breakfast scramble, that's for sure.
Again, but if you're eating it while driving, you could become the breakfast scramble.
Yeah, no eating while driving.
Yeah, don't eat while driving. We can all agree on that, right? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the wonderful world of car ads. Now, I love a good car ad because I'm going up a mountain. I remember GMC had an ad years ago where they had like an SUV on the top of like some rock formation. Like, clearly the only way I got this vehicle up here was the helicopter.
That sounds like every pickup truck ad ever made.
They're the best. They're totally realistic. They make me feel like a real man who's never eaten tofu. But the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety has an article, more car ads promote vehicle performance despite dangers of speed. And it talks about how the broadcasters should be, following some sort of regulations and not promoting this stuff. So I'm going to quote from this article. ABC's standards were more specific, stating that safe and lawful driving practices should be depicted at all times, but there was no mention of sticking to reasonable speeds in their examples of safe driving. Similarly, NBC Universal required that advertisers portray compliance with safety standards precautions, calling it the use of seatbelts, but ignoring speed. So this is why you see a bunch of cars speeding down the highway, doing, K-turns and things like that, but they're wearing a seatbelt. That makes it okay, I guess.
Yeah, so what sells cars is speed and horsepower.
Yeah.
And the ads are very misleading because even... the speed will kill you, number one. But number two, the horsepower that they talk about is really not available to anybody who's driving the car. Because if you ever did get 500 horsepower coming through your rear wheels, they'd be spinning wildly and you'd be completely out of control. And the actual vehicle that you might be driving going down the highway will consume about 25, 30 horsepower, maybe 50 horsepower going up a reasonable grade, unless you've got the pickup truck with towing a whole tractor trailer full of concrete up the side of Mount Everest or something. Okay, then you can use it. But
that was a pretty good pickup.
Yeah,
truck,
that sound. I think we have a new theme song.
I practiced that.
The IHS study is interesting because they looked at a lot of ads, and so they tracked a period from 2018 to 2022, 5-year period, in which deaths linked to speeding and aggressive and driving were going up. And at the same time, these ads were going up. Now, I know it's difficult to establish, causation between that kind of thing. Just like, there are lots of video games out there and movies that show the same thing. And there's there's responsibilities here that, you mentioned the networks, Anthony, and, their policies on this. There's responsibility that I think should be put on the manufacturers there to not give these ads to the networks to show to America in the first place. But that's not the law in the United States. I guess there are some free speech, commercial speech concerns involved there. In the United Kingdom, you can't advertise cars like this. You can't show them doing unsafe things in advertisements on TV. You can still make the movies and the video games and all the other stuff, but so it's interesting how different countries approach these things. Obviously, the UK doesn't have the kind of the speed related fatality rate that we do in the United States. So, maybe there's something to this. And it's something the center has tried to work on for decades. I mean, we used to participate in an awards ceremony each year for the most irresponsible advertising. We worked on a documentary called Power Trip with Myron Levin in the last couple of years, which is essentially on this subject. It shows a lot of those ads and really explores, the kind of the legal and the social and cultural issues that are going on there. But this is something that's so obvious. We see it all the time on television and in other media. And, obviously it's having some sort of impact, particularly on people who are maybe a little more impressionable by images of cool and masculinity and other things that show up in these ads. So it is a contributor to the way that some people drive. And it's not a good contributor, right?
Are these ads effective with women? Because they look like, ads aimed at teenage boys. And
I don't know.
The three of us.
Matthew McConaughey. I don't know.
But he's not riding up a mountainside, is he? He's just sitting there looking weird and pretentious.
He's usually looking cool in a Lincoln, right? I don't know.
No one looks cool in a Lincoln. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think they've even given up on that. I haven't seen those ads in a long time. But I got to get back to gullibility with the horsepower thing, because all you're really doing with a lot of horsepower under your hood is carrying a whole big block of cast iron around with you everywhere you go. Your car is not designed to produce maximum horsepower for more than 1 or 2 seconds. And if you think you're going to do that, you're going to blow out your bearings and your cooling system. The difference between a car design and a truck design is that the truck design has bearings and cooling system that are adapted for a very high work factor associated with the horsepower, right? So you can go around at 200 horsepower all day long and you won't blow anything up. Your cars are not doing that. So when you buy a car based upon its horsepower claim, all you're doing is really showing your gullibility. You don't need it. It costs you a lot of money. At the time of purchase, it costs you a lot of money. It also costs you a lot because you have to drag it around everywhere you go. My pet peeve. End of rant.
If you're not gullible, listener, go to autosafety.org and click on donate. Or if you want to know what horsepower really means, click on donate. And Fred will come to your house personally with a horse and show you how much it can pull. Right, Fred?
I think that was one of the earlier towels. In fact, I don't remember exactly, but
it's a consistent theme.
Yeah,
Yes.
Fred has still not showed up at our winner's house with a horse. I mean, it was me who won. I mean, I put my thumb on the scale. But
I've never ridden a horse. I'm a fully modern guy.
Wow.
Anyway, let's move on. So this is a fascinating article here. This is an MSN from Autoblog, and it seems that in Euro NCAP, which is their new car assessment program, that a lot of manufacturers don't care about getting a 5-star rating anymore. And we'd always talk about how it's kind of perfunctory in the US that everybody gets it because the standard really hasn't changed. It's pretty weak. And so
almost everyone is, right? That's the real problem.
Right.
Here.
So it means nothing. So whereas in Europe, these people are like, I don't care about hitting that. I'll go for a 4 or I'll go for a 3. Because the point is that, quoting from this article, this one company, Dacia, they're targeted 3 stars, wanting to remain competitive at the affordable end of the market. So basic safety is you got to be able to afford it, is what the takeaway is. But then further down, quoting, Euro NCAP has highlighted the growing use of dual ratings, where certain vehicles achieve different safety scores depending on the trim level or optional safety pack fitted. Honda and Kia follow this approach, with the Honda HR-V and CR-V only achieving 5-star scores in the higher spec configurations, while the Kia K4 received a 4-star rating in its base form. So when you see these ads like, hey, 5-star rating, it's got to be a big asterisk being like, well, I hope you got the upgraded comes with brakes package.
Yeah, I guess there should be. I mean, I don't know how these are, these are all Euro NCAP ratings. How this is playing out in America is very different, I think, because
everybody gets
so many everybody can get 5 stars now. If you get 4 stars, God forbid you get 3 stars. it looks like your quality and because it's dropped off a cliff because the tests are old. Manufacturers have learned how to best comply with the test, procedures, and they've got their head wrapped around these tests that have been sitting there for 15, 20 years or more, right? But in Euro NCAP, they're constantly introducing a range of new tests around, crash avoidance features. NCAP right now in the United States is still catching with automatic emergency braking. Meanwhile, NCAP and Euro already has those tests, and they're rating vehicles based on them. So that's one reason you'll see, I think, in the NCAP test, the base model vehicles getting 4 stars while the top ones get 5, because those top ones have that additional layer of crash avoidance tech and other features that they're rated highly for. Euro NCAP is even rating for things like we've discussed around, your dashboard configuration, whether you've got too many buttons, that kind of thing, a distraction, things that the United States NCAP is not. And so I would say it's, maybe this strategy makes sense for some companies in the European market, but it certainly wouldn't here, given the very different states of our NCAP programs and the extent of testing and rating that go on.
Michael, how many cars are NHTSA testing under NCAP during this current administration?
It varies every year. And I think at some point it's been over 100. I think it's about 30 vehicles now. I think they tested 37 last year. Which is, I think, less than IHS is now testing under, some of the tests with IHS that I think we would prefer to be used by NHTSA. So it's interesting that, in fact, the NCAP's budget, I want to say, is around 6 million, maybe 5 million per year. When you start adding up the cost, because NHTSA goes and blind buys the vehicle. So they have to buy, 40 cars, say. You add up the cost of all those cars, and you're getting close to a large percentage of your budget, which should also be used to enhance testing and do all these other things. So, one of our major challenges in the United States with NCAP is funding, and that's something that I don't know that the agency and Congress have completely gotten their head around. It's disappointing when you see just how well NCAP in the United States started out, and how it has floundered in the last couple of decades.
Could NHTSA file a complaint saying they were unjustly prosecuted under the Biden administration and get access to a $1 billion plus slush fund?
Is that the way the world's working now?
Apparently,
I don't want them to. No, okay. But you know what? If it's hard to comment on that without seeing how it plays out. I would love for NHTSA to have a $1.8 billion safety slush fund. Yes, I would.
I think we all would. So when NHTSA buys these cars, like, does trim level? Do you have any idea in the U.S. testing of this? Does that have an impact, or is it just the U.S. model is just so weak that everyone gets a trophy?
I think NHTSA tries to test the base models because they give them a better idea of, because that's what most people are going to buy typically. And it gives them a better idea of how the vehicles, are performing without all the added enhancements and other things that come with some of the options you can put on the vehicle.
Heated cup holders, things like that.
They're not looking at that, I hope. The only way NHTSA is looking at a heated cup holder is under their recall authority.
All right. Let's jump on. Fred, this is going to be one of your favorite bugaboos. And I think this has been a bugaboo definitely since season 1. And it was how do roads get paid for? And that's, typically you get charged at the state level a gas tax. Some states like California, it's really high. Other states, it's virtually non-existent. But EV owners, they don't buy gasoline, so they're not paying anything. And Fred, early on, you're like, well, these vehicles weigh more, they cause more road wear because of this, but they're getting a free ride. Everyone else is getting taxed on this. But now there's a bill pushing forward to the Build America 250 Act, and part of this is that it would require $130 a federal registration fee to drive an EV. And that fee would increase $5 by every year until it reaches $150. And that's twice the amount that essentially they're guessing that gas power vehicles pay. So this is
Right.
one, the way that our roads are funded is Byzantine. And two, also, I think the administration being like, hey, there's another reason not to get an EV. So, Fred, I want to know from you specifically, why did you write this bill and why are you so anti-EV?
I have mixed feelings about it.
Yeah.
Because it does make sense. People shouldn't be able to evade the taxes or the funding sources for the roads. But given the Byzantine nature of the funding that comes out of both general revenues and applicable road tax, there's probably not enough tax on fuel to pay for the roads, because every time an administration raises the tax, they get kicked out of office. Last time was with Bill Clinton. That caused catastrophic loss of control of both the House and the Senate. And people figure whenever you raise a federal tax, that's going to happen to them. So they don't raise a federal tax. So it really is Byzantine. And I, again, have mixed feelings about it. I don't like the idea of taking the money, putting it into the federal general revenue, and then losing control of it rather than assigning it to the highway tax fund. So I'm not familiar with the details of this tax. I'm not sure where the money's going, how it's being allocated.
It's typically
going. Yeah, it's typically going to support transportation infrastructure projects.
But that could be anything.
If it's assigned that way, it makes sense. It would annoy the people who own EVs, but since I'm not one of them, I guess my mixed feelings are that it's probably a good idea. I'd probably feel differently if I owned an EV.
Y'all give me a minute. I've got a guy here to look at the air conditioner. He got here early. I'll be right back.
Okay. We'll here.
Finish.
So the gas tax is super important. I wonder, it's really important to funding a lot of transportation products, all the safe streets projects, any type of project that would involve what I think we all support is, communication between the things moving around the infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle communications, or that's where a lot of the public funding is going to come from for that kind of thing. So it's an interesting bill because it does reassign some of the responsibility of paying for that infrastructure to electric vehicle owners. I see the need for that. I also could see, as some might argue, that it's a disincentive. A lot of the reason people were buying EVs were to avoid the gas tax and things like that. So it's maybe a little painful for EV owners. But it's, it's interesting there, basically the federal government is telling the states to monitor this. You're not going to be paying the federal government that fee every year. The states are going to have to come out and collect it for you. I don't know if they're going to do it through registrations or through other procedures, but it's interesting. In some ways, and it could help right now with the price of gas, I think the infrastructure project should be doing pretty well. Maybe they don't need this extra money coming in, but I think we'd all like as much funding as possible to head towards our transportation infrastructure.
Better roads. With that, let's jump to Gaslight. You guys remember Gaslight? Remember that section of the show? I do.
Yeah.
I'm going to start off. I'm going to choose Waymo. Nope, Fred, I'm not going to do whatever you're going to do. My Waymo is going to be related to how Waymo has this problem where they've been driving into floods or they stop and they're afraid of tiny little puddles. But this has happened a few times. I believe it was in Austin where they drove into floodwaters. And that's what you want in an electric vehicle, or any vehicle for that matter, just to have it there floating. And so quoting from an article, from an article on futurism.com, Waymo quoting says, "We're working to implement additional software safeguards and have put mitigations in place, including refining our extreme weather operations during periods of intense rain." So that means is Waymo is like, hey, we're going to figure out a way to geofence our vehicles so they don't go in floods. When it comes to school buses, suck it, kids. So they have this technology. They can go ahead and do this. But again, when it comes to school buses, they don't give a crap.
Is that what's going on here? I mean,
they have technology to avoid flooding.
they think, right? They've put a recall in, but for all we know at this point, they're still trying to train their AI, right,
Well,
to
but
figure this out.
at least their approach with flooding is a positive direction. Whereas with school buses, they said, "Oh yeah, we did a recall. It didn't work. Nope, we're not going to stop operating around school buses."
Yeah. I mean, the remedy program for the recall is different, right? They modified the approved scope of operation to get away from the flooding events, but they refused to modify the scope of operation to avoid school buses as requested by Austin.
Exactly, and Atlanta as well. I believe. I think it wasn't Georgia.
Atlanta was some issues.
Yeah.
I know Austin School District requested that,
Right.
but and Atlanta may have.
Atlanta, I think.
Well, come on. Are you guys environmentalists or not? Because you've got to decide what's more important: avoiding children or avoiding nature. And,
both. Yes, is the answer.
Clearly, right? Waymo came down on the side of the environment. So, how can you argue with that?
I mean, both of these situations are something that drivers encounter all the time, and that as an autonomous vehicle company, you should be handling with few or any problems, right?
One would think. So Waymo gets my gaslight of the century, of this week anyway. Who's up next? Who's ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Oh, he is, ladies and gentlemen. Fred Perkins is stretching.
So there's an article or a newsletter, or what the hell is it? An open letter, Michael, that came out that talks from medical responders or medical people. I guess an organization called Doximity. Anyway, what they've done, and I'm calling them Physicians United, is that they have endorsed the whole idea that since AVs are saving 92% of lives, that we must proliferate these as rapidly as possible, and we got to get out of the way of these miserable states like Massachusetts, my own base state, that is trying to have reasonable regulations put in place for AVs. So, quoting from them, it says, "We call on state and local governments to replace unwarranted regulatory barriers with evidence-based frameworks that encourage deployment where the data supports it. New York, Massachusetts, Washington, D.C., and Minnesota are attempting to or have effectively blocked autonomous vehicles despite this growing body of evidence of AV safety."
Body of evidence?
Well, that's key, isn't it? Because the growing body of evidence is based on a single biased in-house study that was not peer-reviewed by Waymo, which is the leading proponent of AV proliferation.
Fred.
It seems pretty clear that Waymo wrote this letter.
Fred, in this article, it says, and I'm going to quote from this letter, it says, a 2025 peer-reviewed study, and they link to the peer-reviewed study. And so I put on my Fred Perkins hat, went to it, went down to their sources in this study, and a lot of it is like Arizona State, like around nothing to do with AVs, but the two AV articles they cite, you're right, were written by Waymo.
So everyone, this letter, I think, was written by the same doctor who wrote the letter to the opinion of the New York Times.
Yes. No, but they cited it. Right. They cited his New York Times article.
He's
the first signer.
He's the first signer.
Yeah.
And he's been pretty clear that he doesn't have an interest with Waymo.
He's pretty clear that he's not smart enough to take the money. He'll just do it for free.
But I will point out in the doctors. I mean, look. I think our main disagreement with the doctors is they are citing the Waymo study and other things. I mean, mentioning Tesla in the article is kind of a boo-boo on their part.
Right.
But they're citing a Waymo study, which, as like hardcore evidence that we need to take this technology everywhere now, which I think is the big problem.
Okay, but I got to stop you right here, because the study that they cite is of early data.
Yep.
Data no later than 2022. It's also a completely different software stack than they've got now.
Right.
So whatever they concluded based on that information has no relevance to the fleet that they're currently proliferating. Yep. So there's no relationship between whatever conclusions, and I think that the conclusions they reached are wrong based on that study, and the vehicles that they're currently proliferating. So the idea that you need to proliferate the current vehicles that are unrelated to any previous safety studies in order to save lives as a compelling argument, not only calls into question Waymo, but it calls into question the judgment of these doctors. Who the hell, would they refuse to use new medical technology based upon a study that is 5 years old? I mean, where the hell are these people coming from? It is just, it's sad that Waymo is bad. It's sadder to me that the medical profession is worse. They're supposed to have technical training and good judgment, and that's not evident.
And just click on a link and check the sources. But with that, I will point out from this is I just got to quote real quick because there's one part of this I think we can all agree on. Part of the letter, I'm going to quote, says, we call on Congress.
We call on Congress. That's the good part. That's what I was about to talk
great.
about.
So we call on Congress and NHTSA to establish an enhanced federal data reporting requirements for all autonomous vehicle operators. Crash rates per mile, geographic deployment data, validated benchmarks for comparison, on and on and on.
Independent safety audits verified against police reports, insurance claims, and privacy protected medical records. All those things are things that we would agree with, right?
Right.
Sure. But all of those things delay the implementation of life-saving technology by years or decades. Okay. What they should be doing, if they're really concerned about saving lives, is they should be advocating for the immediate implementation and immediate life-saving impact of automated impairment detection, automatic emergency braking, intelligent speed assist, deployment of these and other proven life-saving technology. You got to remember seatbelts, airbags, dual diagonal braking, backup cameras. Those are all fiercely opposed by the automotive industry before they were introduced. They're now commonplace, saving lives every day. That same approach should be used in proven life-saving technology that could be deployed today, not pie in the sky sometime in the future.
Yep.
Agree.
I'm right along with that. I think we do align with them in what they want the federal government to do, which is to get the public better data.
Yes.
On individual operators too. There's clearly, a big range of safety that we would trust between, for instance, Waymo and Tesla at the moment, or Waymo and some random company that comes in and starts saying they've got the next AV or ADS system. So,
any safety technology that you deploy through AVs is not going to have a measurable impact on highway safety.
No.
For at least 10 or 15 years.
True.
Right.
This is
which leads into that leads into my gaslight, right? Which is
good transition.
Which is our most famous gaslighter,
Kyle from Cruise.
This person says 5 years from now, and certainly 10 years from now, probably 90% of all distance driven will be driven by the AI in a self-driving car.
Name that famous South African.
So overwhelmingly, it'll be quite a niche thing in 10 years to actually be driving your own car. I don't think I really need to even say anything about that, but 90%, effectively what Elon is saying here is that we're going to replace 90% of the fleet with self-driving AIs in the next 10 years, absolutely, and probably 5 years from now.
Hey, Elon de Klerk says a lot of things.
Does that sound like even remotely possible? Or I don't know.
But in ranking gaslights, I got to ask you, is it more important to consider somebody who's slinging bullshit, who's been slinging bullshit for a long, long time, or the perversion of the medical community to serve the corporate ends of Waymo? Come on, Anthony.
This is Fred. You make an excellent point here. I think, Michael, you were playing softball a little too easy. It's a good one. I agree. Fred, no. Fred, you got a good point, but half of what the doctors are saying, we'd agree with. But at the same time, Waymo is a little softball too for me. So I think Fred, you just squeak out just by the smallest amount, you win.
All right. I'll take it.
I'll
take
the
win.
And he didn't even consider himself.
No, I did. He barely beat me. No, you had no chance. Come on, you do it. Elon de Klerk Musk. Come on, please. Hey,
that's that.
Yeah, and that's the end of that section, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to one of my favorite subjects, New York City. So we've talked about this in the past, about speeders. And this happens all over the country. The New York Times has an article, and this is great. New York City is proposing, New York State is proposing a bill that would require super speeders to install speed limiting devices on their vehicles. Not only do they have to pay to have it installed, they have to pay a daily subscription fee, $4 a day, to use this. I'm going to quote from this New York Times article. Driver must be caught on camera speeding 16 or more times in a single year or more than once a month to qualify as a super speeder. In New York City, that designation currently includes about 14,600 vehicles. Holy, what the, huh? Further down, the device known as an intelligent speed assistance is a small box affixed to the dashboard that uses GPS to identify the speed limit, 25 miles per hour, 25 miles per hour or less on most local streets and higher on highways, and caps the driver slightly above it. I think this is amazing. They talk about further down, the 10 most frequent offenders in New York City last year accrued an average of 179 camera speeding tickets, and the worst driver has been caught more than 1,000 times since 2023. One of those drivers was James Giovansanti, a police officer on Staten Island who has amassed more than 500 speeding and red light violations since 2022. What? The police department's like, well, we're investigating this. He was not doing this.
Yeah, that really caught my eye there. Yeah.
Where he wasn't doing it while he was playing police.
The fact that they even mentioned that the violations occurred when he was off duty as potentially mitigating the problem here is.
But I was blown.
It's kind of pathetic.
I mean, over
slow down, Jimmy.
Over 14,000 violations, of people who qualify for this. That's. I mean, I guess that's a city of 8 million people, but most of these people don't own cars.
I think that the law. What did it? It said that you had to offend something like 16
times in 1 year
before you got this considered for this technology. I think it should be far lower than that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, then my wife would qualify.
Well, I mean, I don't think I've gotten I got a speeding citation about 17 years ago, going through a tunnel in DC. From one of those cameras.
Oh, the D Street tunnel. That
but
part.
5 in a year. Good Lord.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
16 in a year is what you need. It's.
Yeah, I think they should lower that bar.
Right.
And I think one of the big problems here is that they're not connecting. They're not effectively. They're using technology to capture a license plate that connects the vehicle to the crime, but. I wonder if maybe they should be connecting it to the person and connecting it up to their
insurance,
driver record, and insurance, and all that. At this point, I think we have the ability to do that.
Do we?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but the first problem here is establishing the precedent and getting a bar in place of any kind.
Right.
It can be tweaked in the future to improve the outcome. But certainly we shouldn't let better be the enemy of good in this case. And hopefully this will move ahead.
Yeah, right now it's in discussions with the Albany state legislature. We'll give updates when hopefully they all grow a pair and pass this one, because this is just a no-brainer.
Yeah, this needs to go out across America, the super speeder.
Super easy, lightweight stuff.
That could really, really reduce a lot of the problems we have, because it's these problem over and over speeders and reaching extreme speeds that I think are behind some of the largest growths and crashes we've seen over the past decade or so. So
without a doubt,
something that really needs to be addressed. And a lot of the speeding freedom fighters are out there trying to avoid the impact of technology that will actually slow them down. And a lot of politicians buy into those arguments. And we are where we're at, but Europe already has intelligent speed assistance in its vehicles. We need to get NHTSA going along that path and start addressing this in the United States.
Let's move on. Let's go back to my friends at Waymo and Fred's friends at Waymo too. This is from a Wired.com article where I'm just going to quote directly. We've seen some behavior we haven't seen in a few years. Waymo is frequently now blocking our fire stations from access, added Chief Patrick Rabbit, the head of the San Francisco Fire Department. Their default is to freeze. The situation can prevent fire trucks from responding to emergencies in a timely and appropriate way, he said. In Austin, first responders have been frequently stymied by Waymo's freezing up, said Lieutenant William White, head of the Highway Enforcement Command at the Austin Police Department. White said that contrary to what Waymo had told first responders, The vehicles often fail to recognize or respond to officers' hand signals, which can lead to cascading delays during emergencies or unusual road instances. I believe the technology was deployed too quickly in too vast amounts with hundreds of vehicles when it wasn't really ready, White said. NHTSA did not respond to comments. I don't know why NHTSA would respond. This would be more of a Austin, Texas state legislature allowing these things on their roads thing. Would be my takeaway.
Yeah, or
I mean, I guess they got exemptions, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a little disconcerting. For years now, I think we've pointed out the problems with human and robot interactions in this space, and the fact that first responders and people who are in the middle of all this on the roads are saying that they're getting worse is pretty concerning.
Hey, I got a legal question for you, Michael.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, let's say that
he was holding it for a friend.
A passenger in a Waymo, and you're in Austin, Texas, and the Waymo freezes in front of a fire truck, and a fire truck just says, "Hell with this," hits the accelerator, pushes the Waymo out of the way, and the passenger gets injured. Now, the passenger's already signed away their rights to sue Waymo. So how does that, what happens to that passenger in that case?
That's got a lot of issues.
They become TikTok famous.
Yeah, you're like, can you sue your local fire department or government, or are they protected under some type of city state exclusion from liability in that situation?
Yeah, but you're already giving away your rights to Waymo. So
is there an intervening negligence on the part of the firefighter that absolves the Waymo vehicle from stopping? That's got a lot of issues there.
Do fire departments do this?
It's been done.
Really?
I don't think they do it to occupied vehicles, right?
Well,
if you've got a vehicle and it's an emergency and you're blocking a road and you've parked your vehicle in the middle of the road and a fire truck can't get by, you may be fair game there. If you parked your car in front of a hydrant and there's a fire and they need to break your windows out to get the hose through, that could happen. Maybe that's just in the movies, but I'm pretty sure that happens sometimes in real life.
I've seen pictures of that. Yeah.
All right. And but hitting a vehicle purposefully when there's an occupant in it, I think is well beyond the scope of what a fire department would do,
you're a good San Francisco parent, so you put your 9-year-old in there to go to school, and you can't see them in the back seat. You just see there's no one at the driver's side, so the fire department's hitting them. And little Timmy,
I think the question might be better at if the Waymo stopped and the right in front of a fire hydrant. I mean, right in front of a fire truck, and the truck couldn't avoid it. Right, it's the same.
Well, there's the record of them pulling into fire station driveways.
Yeah, and blocking. That's what they're
blocking. When there's a communications blackout.
I mean, Waymo is pro-fire is what I'm hearing. They're probably going around town setting fires with lithium-ion batteries. And then,
so another question that comes up is, if they do that, if that ever arises, how do they train their Waymos not to do that? Because they're now using end-to-end AI. So they would have to use many, many instances of this happening in order to get the Waymo to avoid it. Oh, never mind. I'm going down a rabbit hole. Forget it.
That's an excellent question. You're such a smart person. Let me research that for you.
Thank you so much.
Are you our AI?
I'm your AI.
Thanks.
I'm your AI guy. But who's our real AI guy is Mr. Fred Perkins. You ready for some Tao time?
I'm a robot. Let's go.
Okay, Robot Fred.
Hey, I have a question before you do that. I'm thinking of, the Kink song Lola?
Yeah.
Is that available on karaoke? Because I'm thinking of rewriting those lyrics in honor of Waymo.
Even if it's not, I think Anthony could probably play the background for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to do a karaoke with Fred Perkins, go to autosafety.org and click on donate. You can donate just $1 and he will take you to his local karaoke bar.
Oh, wah, 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 Waymo. I can see it coming already. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the safety standard for essentially all cars, and particularly all the self-driving cars, which is safety is defined as the absence of unreasonable risk. This is bullshit. It's a safety standard that you cannot put a number to? What is the number that you ascribe to reasonableness, Michael?
There is not one. I mean, this is the standard for recalls, essentially.
Right. So it's all
An
qualitative.
unreasonable risk to motor vehicle safety. And there has never been an agreed upon standard or number of percent of defects, blah, blah, blah. There's language like a defect can't be de minimis.
Right,
and we can
right.
debate what that means forever, but there's really not a definition there.
Right. So the self-driving car is a machine, right? And for people to build machines, you need to have a bunch of numbers because the machines respond to numbers. You got to cut metal. You got to make it fit together. You got to put software in place. You got to have a certain number of lines of code. It's got to execute a certain way. And just saying everything is reasonable, everything is qualitative, is never going to work to establish a numerical safety standard that people can accept. And what they're really doing when they do this is they're pushing the whole problem down the road and waiting for a court to decide what reasonable means in the context of a self-driving car. And so there'll be another decade or so until the judgment comes down. It's been litigated all the way through the Supreme Court. And God help us if these jokers are still in there then, to figure out what reasonable means in this context. So for comparison, I wanted to think about another complex machinery, which is called a satellite or a missile or a launch vehicle, because I'm more familiar with that. And there's a standard for how to make them safe and how to make them workable, which is called clicking to it right now, handy title.
This sounds like something out of Dr. Strangelove, how to make a missile safe.
It is kind of. It's Space and Missile Systems Center standard test requirements for launch, upper stage, and space vehicles. So these are machines with comparable complexity to the self-driving vehicles. And it's possible to put on paper the numerical standards for how to make this acceptably safe for operation in the vicinity of people or space or universe or whatever. So I looked up the word reasonable in that standard. And
ladies and gentlemen, if you want Fred at your next children's birthday party.
It's 127 pages and it is rocket science. Okay. So I recommend this to anybody who really wants to get a lot of sleep because it's hard to go through. But anyway, out of 127 pages of standards, including purpose application, baseline requirements, tailoring, yada, 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 I was surprised to find that the word reasonable does come up. And it comes up in one instance where it talks about a test description. And it says one or more units shall be operated under conditions that simulate their service conditions. Service conditions define the operational environment in which the unit is expected to operate. Well, that sounds a lot like a test environment for an AV, actually, doesn't it? As such, it is reasonable to demonstrate the condition when the unit is in an active and operational mode. That's it. That's how far reasonable goes when you're into rocket science and you're building a missile or a satellite before the customer, which is the U.S. government, will accept that it is safe for operation. So I think that we should really abandon this whole idea, however impractical it may be to advocate that absence of unreasonable risk is a useful parameter for designing in the safety of self-driving vehicles.
Right. It's not a benchmark. It's a flexible. It's not a standard because it's flexible by its nature. Is that what we're saying here?
Well, engineers should be embarrassed to talk about reasonableness as a way to design something. Hard to put that on your slide rule, and it doesn't have any reasonable detent on it.
You got to turn it over.
And that's kind of what I was trying to get at, but may not have succeeded at getting at earlier, talking about NHTSA's recall process, like evaluation. There is no arithmetic behind it all, right? There's not we've hit this threshold, this has to be a recall. It's kind of a look at all of the circumstances and, Different administrations will see problems differently, safety issues differently, and it allows for that kind of political flexibility. But I think it leads to a lot of confusion. Where's that hard line when a vehicle needs to be recalled?
Yeah, and the other thing it does is it pushes the whole problem down the road years because it's going to go into litigation. It's going to wait for a judge somewhere to make a judgment and a jury and who knows what. So in the interim, whatever the defect was that caused the death of somebody or the terrible injury of somebody can still be produced, implemented, and put out in the field. So we really need NHTSA, and there's no one else who can do this, to start working on a standard that becomes part of the certification process for self-driving vehicles. And instead of just throwing open the doors and waiting 10 or 20 years for a judge somewhere to make a judgment after a catastrophe bad enough to force people to make that judgment. So that's it for today.
Well, thanks for sharing. I thought, Michael, a recall was decided automatically if the name badge said Ford.
Come on. You're killing them.
Jim Farley, you're welcome as a guest anytime you'd like.
We didn't have a Ford recall this week.
Well, let's find out. Let's do recalls.
There was one. I left it out.
Oh, okay. Recall time. First up, Chrysler, 61,711 vehicles. The 2019 to 2023 Jeep Cherokee. An internally failed PTU can cause an unexpected and unrecoverable.
What's a PTU?
I don't know. It's three letters.
It's a power transfer unit.
Of course, everyone knows about it. And this is a 2-speed power transfer unit. This loss of failed power transfer unit can cause an unexpected and unrecoverable loss of motive power at any speed or rolling in park. So I'm in park and the car will roll. Is that what it means? Or is like rolling in park like the South Philly slide where you don't really come to a stop?
Yeah, when you put your car into park, it locks the transmission.
Yeah.
When you put on the emergency brake, it locks the wheels. So if you are locking the transmission by putting it in park, but the transmission is broken, which is what this is talking about, then your car can roll away.
See, back in the day, you used to have a handbrake, and so you'd pull that up first while you're still in drive, and then put it in park. But my modern cars don't have that. There's like a little park button thing. I've never touched it, and I put it in park, and the light goes on. So I guess it puts on the parking brake. I don't know how it works these days.
Well, that's pretty much how it works. You turn it on, and it works. It's kind of like a switch, Anthony. You may have seen those.
I like the handle where it goes.
I had a friend who used to love that handle because when he was going around a corner, if he pulled the handle up suddenly, you could break traction on the rear wheels and he'd spin around.
Yep.
So that was fun.
K-turns, fun, high speed. All right. So
that one's going to be delayed. It looks like too. Chrysler says that the remedy's under development and they're going to give owners an interim notification in about a month, but that may just tell you that the recall has been delayed and that is going to tell you that the recall has been delayed and that you will hear about it at some later date.
Well, I looked it up. This turns out to be a very complex piece of machinery. It's like a transfer case that they used to have in the old days to just move things from the front to the rear wheels. But it also includes clutches and sensors and comparative measurement of the wheels, the rotational speed, and yada, yada, yada. So it's a pretty much your basic nightmare.
That's not involved in my nightmare. I'm not going to get into my nightmare. Next up, recall from a little artificial intelligence rocket company called Tesla.
They're not a rocket company yet.
Oh, well, whatever nonsense. 218,868 vehicles. Oh, no, they can't be recalled. 2023 Model Y, 2022 Model Y, 2021 Model Y. I don't know why they're all separate. 2020 Model Y, 2023 Model X, 2022 Model X, 2021 Model X, 2023 Model S. You got a Tesla, just drive it into a ditch. Loss of the rear view car. Of course. We disappear for a couple weeks and this is how you do me. Loss of the rear view camera image may affect the driver's rear view and increase the risk of a collision. The driver may continue to reverse the vehicle by performing a shoulder check and using their mirrors. Wait, who wrote that part? Who wrote that part in the recall notice saying, hey, as a driver, you can turn your neck and look around behind you? Did Tesla write that or does NHTSA write that?
Tesla writes these.
Okay, +1 for them. That's a great sense of humor. I love that. Yep. Yeah. So what is this? Is this over the air? Is this the
Yeah. Well, so that's something I wanted to point out. But this one, we don't usually have to talk about owners and delays on recalls when it's one of these over the air updates. So they started pushing this OTA software remedy out on April 11th, 2026, and they filed this late. They could be fined for filing this on May 4th because that's way past the time there should be notifying NHTSA that there's a defect in their vehicles. But at this point, 99.92% of the population has already received the firmware fixing, hopefully, this problem. So all in all, that's pretty good recall performance on repair, not so much on the notification side of things from Tesla.
Shameful. Maybe, dear leader was busy in a lawsuit that he dreamt up.
Yeah, maybe so. If you're an owner, they're going to notify you sometime in July. I don't know why their recall process is so odd.
And just for my own satisfaction, can you say what was the name of that month again?
July.
Oh, I enjoy the way you say the word July. July. All right. The proper Southern gentleman. He was wearing a seersucker suit while he said that.
Hey, what do you need to use when it rains in July? Your umbrella.
Okay. Enough of this nonsense. Next up, Mercedes. 144,049 vehicles. The 2026 AMG GLC 43. 2025 some other ridiculous AMG E53 E4matic
Just
Plus.
Stop it.
Yeah,
None
no.
of our listeners
Oh my
wanna
God,
hear
it
you
keeps
There's
going
like 10
on.
pages of them. Yeah.
Oh, it doesn't end. It keeps going. I mean, if you're gonna spend, these vehicles are what, minimum $70,000. Can't you at least get better? Oh, I keep scrolling, people. It doesn't end. If you have a Mercedes,
essentially, they're losing. You're losing a display here.
Is it a rear view camera?
No,
Okay.
I don't know if the review camera is potentially part of it, but it's essentially your dashboard.
Oh, that's not good.
And it was a new software version that they introduced in August that caused this. So that is the issue here. Mercedes is doing this as an OTA campaign as well. So this is something owners should be receiving notice of through their vehicle, and looks like they'll hear more about it in June, late June. But I don't know how it's hard to tell with these OTA recalls exactly when the campaign is beginning or ending or will take place. So
yeah, from the notice, during the brief period the reset is in process, the instrument cluster may not display certain driving related information. That's a little vague. Is it my speed? Is it the outside air temperature? What is it not displaying? My tachyometer?
Yeah. And I'll point out, and I was hoping that a manufacturer that usually takes some of the care that Mercedes does on some of these safety issues, it's because there's a connection, it appears, between the infotainment system and safety systems, which is pet peeve.
Mm-hmm. Last up, a company called Waymo LLC. 5th and 6th generation ADS. On higher speed roadways, the Waymo AV may slow but not stop in response to detecting a potentially untraversible flooded lane. Or, as we've seen in footage, a puddle. It will just stop. So puddles be damned. So you don't even need the orange cones to put on the front of these cars. Just empty your water bottle in front of a Waymo, and it'll just be like, I can't move anymore.
That's funny.
Well, I think you need to read this carefully. It says untraversible. So what that means is that it will slowly enter water that it will not be able to navigate.
Unless there's a school bus in front of it with its stop arm out, then it just says, yeah, let's just go for it.
That's true. The school bus is floating.
Yeah, good. With that, listeners, thank you for being with us here today on the hottest day.
You stopped at investigations.
I did. Do I have to do
There's
the
apparently a
investigation?
Waymo competitor in there.
All right.
Yeah.
What's the investigation you want me to do?
And
The
it's an
Uber.
open investigation. I think it was maybe a week ago.
All right, let's take a look at
It's AV Ride Inc., which is apparently the company that Uber is working with. They've been having some crashes. I think they had like 16 in the first 4 months of operation there.
Oh, wait. Sure. In the report, it lists crashes/fires as one line. That seems like a weird combination. Why wouldn't they separate those out? Crashes, fires, not crashes/fire. This could be, I mean,
because they're tracking them. Like if a vehicle catches on fire and nobody's in it in your driveway, they count them in that same line.
Yeah, but that's weird. I would want that separated.
They don't do that on the back end. That's just their way of kind of summary. Because some investigations will be the incidents are going to be fires. Some investigations, the incidents are going to be crashes. Some are going to be both.
So since Fred insisted on this investigation discussion, what do we need to know here?
Essentially, that the Uber's company is being investigated for a number of crashes, and they're very similar to what we've already seen, like changing lanes when there's a vehicle in close proximity, failing to slow or stop for other vehicles in the lane ahead. That's a problem. Automatic emergency braking should be doing that on the basic cars. AV shouldn't be having that problem. Striking stationary objects in the lane and path ahead again. So there have been some property damage and minor injuries, nothing serious yet, but
there are a couple of videos, couple of videos that showed the AV rides being stopped at a red light, and then they spontaneously decided to drive through the red light, making left-hand turns, even though it was still red. So that's not good behavior either.
No,
that sounds like people in my neighborhood. Can I recall them?
Sure.
Okay.
I can't comment on that.
That's fine.
I think they've all come up to Beckett to spend the summer. So yeah, please do recall them.
Lovely. Fred, is the show over now?
You have my permission.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, listeners. Remember, when you're at the Piggly Wiggly listening to this, go to autosafety.org, click donate. Fred will come to your house and sing karaoke with you on his horse. Till next time.
Boy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
For more information, visit www.autosafety.org.